Hi, everyone. Bob Dietrich here with another episode of the ADHD Toolbox. And you know what? Today is probably going to be the best interview of the whole series. That doesn't mean you shouldn't keep watching, but this one is going to be awesome because we're going to focus on the positive qualities of ADHD and how to bring out that inner genius inside every ADHD mind. And I'm super excited and happy to have our next guest here, Laurie Dupar. Laurie, welcome to our show today.
Thanks, Bob. I'm super excited to be here. Thank you.
All right. Well, Laurie is a trained psychiatric nurse practitioner, 18-year veteran to ADHD life coach, and director and founder of the International ADHD Coach Training Center, where you can find that at iACTcenter.com. And she uses unparalleled expertise in neuroscience and behavioral management of ADHD to help people thrive with ADHD. Laurie's private clients benefit from fully understanding how their brain works and are able to minimize their challenges and get things done. And that's super important. In 2015, she founded the ICF, the International Coach Federation, which is approved International ADHD Coach Training Center, where she trains and mentors emerging ADHD coaches so they can reach their dream of making a living well, making a difference. So this ADHD coaching can be a career path for some people who do have ADHD and have broken through with it and are helping others as well. So that often happens with Laurie's coaching. She also co-authors and is the editor of the, has co-authored and is the editor of the #1 best-selling series, the ADHD Awareness Book Project, that includes titles such as 365 Ways to Succeed with ADHD, Inspirational Ways to Succeed with ADHD, and Wacky Ways to Succeed with ADHD. So all about success, all about the positive qualities, which is why this is going to be one of the best episodes in our series. And she also has a book called Brain Surfing and 31 Awesome Qualities of ADHD. Yeah. So let's talk about the positive stuff today. I mean, just to start, I mean, there are some people, well-known, famous people that have ADHD, and how do they make it work so well?
I think they make it work because they're doing what we're going to be talking about today, and maybe they've been lucky enough to be able to tap into those the positive qualities that they have and be able to leverage them. That's really what makes a difference. And I'm a really big believer, Bob, that everybody with ADHD has these positive qualities. I mean, I think that people in general do, definitely. But what my experience has shown is that so much time is spent trying to fit into the box or fix what doesn't work or what isn't working for people with ADHD, that it's very common that we're not even looking at these innate strengths or talents that we have that can really rebalance our lives and propel us into those places where people like Michael Phelps or I'm convinced that like Columbus was definitely one of those people that must have had ADHD. I mean, who else gets on a big boat, sails off into the horizon, not knowing what's out there and says, well, let's just check it out and see what's going to happen, right? That is somebody with ADHD. There are so many people, I think, that are making really big differences in the world that have ADHD by being able to tap into their positive qualities.
Yeah, and just looking at the list that I mean, if you Google on the internet, you'll find Justin Timberlake, you'll find Adam Levine, you'll find Howie Mandel, Paris Hilton, people like that, and you know, you look at the behavioral of like Robin Williams, for example. I mean, classic ADHD behavior as an adult, and look at the genius that man was. So awesome stuff that's available to you if you can you know, kind of corral this wild horse. And you know, I think Dr. Edward Hollowell kind of describes it as the Ferrari motor, and a Ferrari, you know, with bicycle brakes. It's like you got this amazing motor that you can't stop, and you need more than bicycle brakes to stop it or to control it. So let's talk about some of the less appreciated positive qualities. What are some of the positive qualities that people with ADHD display?
Yeah. One of the things that when I'm talking about this, I some of this is anecdotal, meaning that It's just what I have seen, and other people that I talk to have seen over, you know, the 18 years of doing this full time. It wasn't something I actually expected when I started working with people with ADHD, but it was something that I soon found out that was that there was always that underneath sometimes the very real challenges that people are having with ADHD are these oftentimes untapped qualities, things like intelligence, right? Not that that surprises anybody with ADHD, but a high percentage of people, the research that has been done shows that a high percentage of people with ADHD are incredibly intelligent. It also makes them amazing problem solvers, out of the box thinkers. They tend to be incredibly curious, incredibly creative and imaginative. I was talking with a client the other day who she's kind of the lead person. She has her own job that she does in a company, but when they get stuck, when all of the engineers get stuck on a project, they sort of pass it off to her for a little while to play around with it, because she has this ability to think out of the box, doesn't have the same sort of rules or that they are functioning with in order to create it. And then she passes it back to them. That's a perfect description of people with ADHD. They tend to be really adventurous, risk takers. Sometimes that might get them in trouble, but it also is what makes them amazing entrepreneurs. Tend to be very intuitive, also a sense of being very empathic, really having a sense of other people. Now, each person has a different, may have a different expression of these or a different combination of expressions of these. What I'm saying is, just like when we're looking at ADHD, some people have more of disorganization or more difficulty planning, and other people have no problem with those areas. That's the same when we're looking with these positive qualities. When I'm talking about this, these are just a really tip of the iceberg of some that each person has. I've never met somebody with ADHD that doesn't have some amazing talent or skill or strength that really they may not be leveraging in their life. Other things are sense of humor. Definitely. You just mentioned Robin Williams. Absolutely. They also tend to be very optimistic. I tend to also find that people with ADHD tend to have a very strong moral code about what's right and what's wrong. Certainly, hyperfocus is one of those. It can be a blessing and a curse, but for a lot of people who know how to leverage that particular opportunity, that particular talent of hyperfocusing on something that they're interested in, it really can be a gift for them. So those are just sort of just some of them that I see continuously when I'm working with some of the best people. I call it, I have the best job ever. I get to work with these genius people all the time.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And you know, I do improv every week. Part of an improv club through Toastmasters International, and we get to play and have fun and express ourselves and build that out of the box thinking. And I would imagine that that people with ADHD probably really thrive in that kind of environment. It really kind of pulls that out of them and lets them express themselves more freely.
I absolutely think you're right. In fact, I know a lot of people who are ADHD are definitely in the artistic field, certainly in acting, other kinds of artistic fields. But yeah, I think you're right. Because of, for some people, if they would get in a situation like that, they may just sort of clam up, right? They have that sort of anxiety that kicks in, and they may not be able to think, and so may not think that they're very good at improv. But my guess is that for the folks that really find that they tend to, where their impulsivity or their very active brain might even get in the way of them blurting things, and you added to that the creativity, the humor, and intelligence, they're going to have a ball in a improv
Yes.
situation.
Yeah. And improv is a safe environment to express yourself like that. You get into like Richard Branson territory, right? He's a very famous person who has ADHD, the type of person that embraces that condition. But he also was jumping off buildings with parachutes and all these wild things.
Right.
And those are some of the things you mean by getting in trouble, aren't they?
Yeah, they can. Yeah, I think when we don't understand that our brains thrive, or for some people's brains thrive in those situations, we may seek out those kinds of adventures that and may not even think about the safety involved with those. My guess is Richard Branson has a lot of people around him who are making sure he lands safely, right?
Well,
But
yeah, now he does for sure.
now it does, yeah. So it doesn't mean that you can't do those things. In
Right.
fact, I think if you are somebody that really enjoys that kind of thrill, absolutely knock yourself out, do it. Just make sure you're doing it in a safe way. I
Yes.
don't think that that takes the thrill out of it as much as it makes sure you can do it again. That's kind of how I think about it.
Awesome, awesome. And then I also think of other people that that have been said to have ADHD, like Einstein and Thomas Edison. I mean,
Yes,
these are amazing people, have changed the course of our history,
absolutely.
and there's the genius inside that inside this ADHD mind that has just, you know,
Yeah.
made such a difference.
Yeah. I think there's many, there's probably, I think there's many people that we can look back
Mhm.
on what their lives are, how they led their life, and some of the things that they did, and their behavior patterns, which created some, like you said, some amazing discoveries in our
Right.
world. And I absolutely uh, would guess, not being able to interview them at this point, right? But guess
Hmm.
that they also had very strong ADHD qualities. There are just certain persistence is another one. We look at Thomas Edison, right? Oh my
Yes.
goodness, that man just kept going and going and going, and it never. He was determined, and
Hmm.
he also kept coming up with new ideas. That is characteristic of someone with ADHD. That perseverance and persistence. Sometimes people call that strong-willed, not realizing it. Those are the same qualities, and those are the same qualities that lead to those kinds of discoveries, or those kinds of adventures, or those kinds of new concepts that
Hmm.
otherwise wouldn't exist.
Well, you know, and I think that's going to be so reassuring to parents who have that kid that's constantly like, are you going to do this for me? Are you going to do this for me? Are you going to, and it's like, they won't stop nagging you about something they want. But you know what? That's the same quality that's going to make them amazing adult, and get them through life, and get
It
that
is.
genius outside.
It absolutely is. And I really do hope that parents hear that and know that. In fact, that is probably how I got on this path myself, was that when my youngest son was diagnosed, I don't know, 20 some years ago, and I recognized that we were focusing trying to fix him in all these different ways. And even though I was a mental health professional, I felt really, didn't have the tools, or felt helpless. But I remember thinking, this is such a brilliant young man, and he was so enthusiastic about life. He was so creative. He had such a great sense of humor. I thought, you know what? There's got to be a way to be able to salvage that. And I think as parents, not. I think most parents I've ever met are wanting to do the best job for their kids, but we may not be looking ahead and saying, how are some of these qualities the ones that really can be an asset as they get older? And it may be very difficult to have a child who continuously is
Yeah.
taking risks with his life, and
Hmm.
you're pulling your hair out about it. But maybe they're also the one that's going to take that risk and discover some new invention, or start a new company. It's the same thing. It's just at a different part of their life. And believe me, I have 4 kids, so I've done this for a long time working with other kids, so I know that some of these qualities can be quite a challenge when they're younger.
Right. So when let's say you're a parent and you have a smaller child out there,
Yep.
it's 5 years old, 7 years old, whatever, and they're struggling with the behaviors, right? They're struggling with all the different challenges in school. You think the kid is going to have he's falling behind because he's not quite where he needs to be, and we know as professionals in ADHD, I'm sure you've heard, and you know that they catch up eventually in adulthood, right? But but they're worried about that, and it's hard to see the genius come through when they're about to fail kindergarten, or they're about to be held back in first grade, right?
Right.
And so, but there's still things that they are really good at,
Yeah.
and so how do you manage that as a parent, where where you want to see the genius, but all you can think about is, I got to get it through this next grade. It's.
Yeah. I get it. It's really hard. There's a lot of pressure out there for our kids to be meeting certain milestones at certain
Hmm.
times.
Hmm.
And and there's so many different ways to answer that question. If we're looking at it from the positive qualities part, is first, I think, to, as a parent, to realize that when your child is struggling academically, that is a very, very small, it's the biggest part of their life that they're walking into. I understand that, but it's a very small part of who they are. And it may be just, everybody has different kinds of intelligences and what they do well and what they don't. And I would encourage the parents to not lose sight, is to get clear about what the specific challenges are for that individual. Are they not, if they have ADHD, there could be a host of reasons that they're not doing well academically. Are they distracted? Are they restless? Are they, impulsive? What is it that's going on? And address those particular challenges as best you can. But to remember to keep, as when I was raising my kids, I look back now and I realize I was always keeping clear in my mind, who is it that I want this individual to be when they're an adult, and realizing that that these kids come with challenges. Certainly, it's the reason that they're diagnosed, but that underneath that, be looking for and notice those things that they do amazingly well, and make sure that they're getting reinforced for them. Make sure that they're being, I don't even say rewarded for them, but there's space in their life when they may not be doing well academically, and we're focusing on them studying all the time to bring those grades up, and may even think about withdrawing some privileges in order that, hoping that they're going to focus more on those academics, and realize that their kids with ADHD already feel like they're failing so often. They even if they're on medication, they are still struggling consistently to try and do well. They really do struggle with keeping a self-esteem. And I think if we can keep an individual's self-esteem through K through 12, they're going to be fine. But it's very difficult to do it when one of the major areas of their life, which is education and academics, they struggle with. So rather than withdrawing the time for them to be able to explore these other talents, it's critical that they have these islands of competence that they're allowed to explore. For my son, he struggled one of my sons really struggled in school. He had to retake a couple of classes in high school. He was also very interested in rocks. And we lived in California at the time, and he was the youngest member of a club called the Rockland Rockhounds. And off my husband and he would go on the weekends exploring rocks, because that's what he was interested in, was geology, right? I have had other students who have a unique talent in archery, and were allowed to pursue that and actually find a lot of success and a lot of self-esteem in that. I think that's the other thing about these kids. They may not be the mainstream when we're starting to look at some of these talents, especially for the young kids. They may not be the mainstream ones. They may not be the kids that are enjoying the soccer experience, which most kids in the United States are introduced to early on, because they get overwhelmed by all of that activity going on. They may also not be they may have some other unusual interests. That I think the other thing my son was interested in was reptiles. So in my house we had, along with the dogs and the cats and the chickens and the bunnies, we had snakes and iguanas and tarantulas, because that was his interest. We found a way for him to actually volunteer during the summer as a camp counselor at a place that had these different kinds of reptiles in it. So, and now I don't know if that actually, I'm real, what I'm getting to here is it is so important that they're allowed to pursue these things that they are really talented in. And most parents are going to see them, right? We may dismiss them originally because we're thinking, gosh, we need to focus on these other pieces. We need to raise this child so they can be independent and be responsible. You mentioned that sometimes that takes a little bit longer for people with ADHD. It does. They're not going to be, they're not going to be, they're going to be able to get up on their own by the time they leave, they're 18 years old. Right. But don't forget that this is also a time for them to discover who they are. And a real big part of that is these things that they do well. Right. And because these are the things that they can use as as career paths actually, or social avenues as they get older, which again is a very big concern for people with ADHD. I'm asked all the time, what is the job that somebody with ADHD should have? And it's really where their interest lies. And the way that we find these things out is to be able to explore them and when we're younger. So I guess overall, just don't lose sight of that piece of it and allow time for that.
Yeah, yeah. I know, like School of Rock is out now, like these places where you can go to learn how to play guitar. You have sports that really can be a way, an outlet for children with ADHD. And then, like you said, I mean, everything from rock collecting to archery can be out. It can be or rock. Rock collecting to rock and roll, right?
Rock and roll.
There you go. It can be anything, and what they love to do is something that they're gonna be almost fanatical about it, because that's the way their mind works.
Yeah, they really are. And I think as parents is really remembering to that, to create the times, or to recognize that there's a balance here. There really is. Like I've mentioned to you, I've never met anyone with ADHD, and I meet a lot of people with ADHD that don't have this positive quality, whether or not they may dismiss it. And that's the other thing, is that oftentimes if you're an adult, so if I'm talking to adults out there, you may not even realize the gifts and the talents that you have, that actually can be shared and enjoyed with and by other people. Because what I find also is that people with ADHD tend to not realize that some of these things that they do are actually quite unique and genius, as you're talking about. Probably never occurred to Thomas Edison not to do anything but keep trying, or Einstein to keep looking for the answers, or Robin Williams to keep, seeing the world in the way he did and tell the crazy, jokes that he did. And we see that as genius, right? And recognize, and so I really encourage people to spend a moment, and maybe if you're not even sure that you see these, ask somebody else that you trust, what is it that you see that I do really well? Because oftentimes we can't see ourselves, we can't see that genius in ourselves, and yet that is what makes us amazing. And when we know what that is, we can leverage it. Again, Robin Williams made a career out of being funny. I honestly think Michael Phelps made a career out of trying to get out his wiggles. I mean, his mom probably threw him in a pool and said, swim, and he had some talent, and it kept going. And it also helped that hyperactivity he had, right? And he just used that hyper focus. There's so many ways to use this to help balance our other struggles that we have.
Right. And I guess the first step is to be aware that they exist, that there are definite positive qualities, and then look for them, and then start to nurture them and maybe encourage them in different actions.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I understand that we were talking about your book earlier, the ebook Brain Surfing and 31 Other Awesome Qualities of ADHD. And how do people get a hold of that book?
Yeah, I actually have a copy of it here. So this is actually named and titled, a client was the one that said, my brain, it's like it surfs all over. I thought that's a great title. And then again, the other qualities. By 31, actually, as I was thinking about it, I probably could add more. But it is a book. And yeah, you guys can get the ebook copy of this on my website at Coaching for ADHD. Just go to the website and you'll see where you can click in and download the book. You can get it on Amazon if you're more of a hardback person, but you can also get it, the exact same book, for free on my website by going to coachingforadhd.com.
Awesome. So you're giving it for free?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. That's awesome. Well, make sure you go to Laurie's site then. What I'll do is I'll make sure that there is a link on this page. Click on that link and it'll take you right to Laurie's website, and you can download it for free.
Absolutely, Bob. My pleasure.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Laurie, for being here. This is such a inspiring and uplifting conversation that I think parents really need to hear sometimes, is that, your child, even as much of a struggle it is to corral all that energy, is really got some special gifts. So look for those gifts, nurture those gifts, and know that's what's going to make him or her independent and amazing as an adult.
Yeah, and happy, by the way. I think that's what parents want. Whenever I talk to parents, Bob, it's like they want their child to be independent, responsible, and happy. And right, when we're living authentically with and being able to express our gifts, that's what happens.
Awesome. Well, Laurie, thank you so much for coming on to our show. Again, if you want to find out more about Laurie, you can find her at coachingforadhd.com. That's one place that we can find you, right? We can also find you at your coaching center, the ADHD International ADHD Coaching Training Center, which is iACTcenter.com. And then you can just contact her through those websites. Make sure you download her your free gift, which is her ebook, and you can find that on this page. And Laurie, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, everyone.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for being here on the ADHD Toolbox. We'll see you on the next episode.
All right. Bye-bye.